Welcome back to the Just As I Am podcast. It is your favorite friend, Nicole, and today on this episode, we are going to begin a deep dive on the 12 radicals of Jesus. So stay tuned. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. By the title, I'm sure that you are possibly thinking this is going to be about Mulan defeating the Huns, and I am sorry, but I'm going to tell you that that's not what we're discussing today. Today, we are starting on the 12 radicals. Okay, so there's 12 on this specific episode. We are going to go over the first 6. So, with that being said, you're probably thinking, what is a radical? Well, a radical means relating to or affecting the fundamental nature of something, far reaching or thorough. It also means to advocate for something. Essentially, this is Jesus advocating for these 12 specific things. Okay? So, we are going to start off with number 1. And the first thing that we're going to discuss is actually kind of ironic to me, because the first one on our list is the last will be first and the first will be last. See what I mean? It's a little funky to me. So if you read Matthew 20:16, this is literally exactly what it says. Okay? And we have to remember, whenever we go over these things, we have to remember, and I will remind you every time, but we have to remember to go back into Jesus's time zone, back into the world in which he was living in. And so every thing that happened back then had like it had a special meaning or a different meaning than what we would have for it today. Does that make sense? So in this case, being first meant you were at the top of the line. It meant that you had the power, the control, you could be the ruler of Roman families, military leaders, even the male heir to the father's family. For Jews, it could mean being a religious leader with the social status to set the rules, okay? Jesus explained how his kingdom does not operate like that. It does not operate like it does here. It doesn't matter what your status or rank is, because when you have those things, that's not what gets you into heaven. As Jesus did best, he explained using a story. He spoke of a landowner who hired 3 groups who came into work at 3 different times, but all got paid the same wage. So think of it this way. You have Group A that comes in, let's say they work 6 to 3. Group B works 8 to 3. And Group C works 12 to 3. But they all get paid the exact same. And I'm not saying like they made $8 an hour. There was a set amount that they were to get paid for doing the work. Well, this really kind of ticked off, let's say, especially Group A, probably a little bit of Group B. But the moral of this story was grace, not firstness. So that's the new rule. Grace is something that God gives us that we don't deserve. And let's face it, God gives us a lot of things that we don't deserve whatsoever. And I am so thankful for that. So life is not a competition because God gives everyone the chance to become his child. So thankful. So coming in, number 2 on our list is do not be afraid. And as humans, I know that this one can be so difficult at times. So difficult because, me personally, I have anxiety really bad. So, it's something I've talked about before, but sometimes I freak out about just really small things, but then sometimes I freak out about really big things. Sometimes I don't freak out at all. But, let's just get into it. So, raise your hand if you have ever seen an ad in some way, shape, or form that has told you to be afraid of something. If you didn't raise your hand, you are not telling the truth. So, I know we've seen commercials, especially nowadays in this time period. We're told to be afraid of all kinds of things. The weather, or this neighborhood. You just think of something and name it. But let's try this one. What about that voice in the back of your head that talks about everything that could go wrong? Definitely have that voice. It has a megaphone. It stays going constantly. This is a kind of fear that keeps us at a standstill, and it uses fear to prevent us to walk forward and follow God's leading. So everyone has fears and worries. Mine is a pretty big list. Some people, they don't worry as much as others, and they are so blessed. And I'm so glad for them that they can live their life and be bold and fearless. But, even in Jesus' time, like I said, and they had a lot of fears and worries back then. They were very much the same as what we may worry about today, such as, what are we going to eat? What will I wear? What will happen tomorrow? Is work going to be okay? Will my car start? Of course, I didn't have cars, but you get what I mean. They had those kind of fears, and I know that there are still people in our world today that still have the fear of, will I be able to eat tomorrow? Will I have clean clothes tomorrow? Will I have a place to sleep? Will I have shelter? One of Jesus' responses can be found in Luke 12:31. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be provided for you. So in the eyes of the Lord, your value is immeasurable. That is why he has given you all of the riches of his kingdom. And let's not forget, though, that the Lord never sugarcoats anything, especially the difficulties in life, right? Jesus let us know that we would be persecuted. Front and center told us, let us know. He's the number one example. And we would also not be put in so happy places. But he tells us to take heart, for he has overcome the world. Period. Regardless of any situation, Jesus is in charge, okay? And this is something that we need to remind ourselves and keep at the forefront of our brain, even if we need to write it on our forehead. God and Jesus are in charge. The Trinity, they've got this. And we will not be defeated, but end up in glory. Hallelujah. In the end, going through troubles, but continuing to trust whether we understand or not, makes us more like Jesus. Trusting in Jesus makes it possible to walk in faith and not fear. Faith over fear. We write it on everything, right? It's something that we say a lot. And we need to stick with that. We need to believe that. We need to have that. God may not keep us out of trouble, but he can certainly get us through it. So, coming in hot at number 3, this one I definitely struggle with, and I know you might struggle with it too. And I could just be saying that to make me feel better. But number 3 is don't do good deeds to be admired. Let me say that again. Don't do good deeds to be admired. Matthew 6:1 tells us, don't do your good deeds publicly to be admired by others, for you will lose the reward from your Father in heaven. Now, like I said, I struggle with this one. I wouldn't say I 100% struggle with this one, but at least, and I hate to say it, maybe 50%, maybe, I don't know. If you know me pretty well, you probably just know. But let's go back on the timeline once again. In Jesus' time, it was a main priority for a lot of religious leaders to show off their holiness, their quote unquote holiness. Okay? They would make a performance of prayer and bringing their donations to the temple. Now, I can't say that I've ever done that, but let's continue. So, Jesus himself said that good deeds are not all that matters. Whoop. God is more considered with why you do them. Okay, he is looking for the right motive. If you're looking for rewards when you do it to be admired, the reward you will receive will not be from God. Jesus said to avoid publicity about doing good deeds. He says to us to be quiet. So quiet that what? Your left hand doesn't know what the right is doing. When Christians do good deeds, God wants their motives to reflect his own. Love, mercy, grace. Not, I made it on the news or I went viral. No, God wants to know that you did that or you've done something because that's what you felt in your heart. So let's say you go to the store and you fill up your grocery cart full or your buggy and you take it to a local shelter or a food pantry, soup kitchen, and you give it there. You give it to them. If you felt that in your heart and you were doing it out of love and you were caring for others, that's what God is worried about. But if you're going to the store, filling up your buggy, taking pictures every step of the way, taking it to the soup kitchen or wherever, taking pictures, blowing it up, if you're looking for that attention, that's not what God is looking for. He knows that that was not something from the heart. So when we accept Jesus, our deeds should be going with God's mission to love him and to love others. God's approval is the only worthy thing that we should be seeking out. With that being said, coming in at number 4, we have love your enemies. No exceptions. First word, love. L-O-V-E. Your what? Enemies. No exceptions. This one definitely is difficult to do at times. But if we look at Luke 6:27 and 28, it says, "Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you, and bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you." That honestly is beautiful. 100%. Once again, back in Jesus' time, the people believed that you are to love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Not love your enemy either. I will give an example and a quote for this from one of my favorite films, The Grinch. It's where the Grinch is going through his phone book and he's naming off who's, and he goes, hate, 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 double hate, loathe entirely. This is absolutely not what God is telling us to do. Love your neighbor has been in existence since Leviticus. Okay? But the hate your enemy? Yeah, people twisted and added that to this commandment. That is not that, telephone, how when somebody says something and then it goes down the line through like 12 people and it's nothing from what it started off to be. Yeah, this is definitely one of those. Although the people found this acceptable, he counteracted with, love your enemy. Do good to those who are out to get you, and bless them and pray for them. And no, he's not saying pray that they fall off a cliff. He literally means to pray for them with kindness and love. Remember when the people who hated Jesus most had him beaten bloody and tortured? Yeah, they did that with him ultimately getting crucified on the cross. So what was Jesus' response? After these people had beaten him, tortured him, provoked him, and put him on the cross to crucify him, Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." These enemies didn't understand God's plan. They did all of this, and yet Jesus asked God to forgive them. So remember number 3? Your enemies are blinded by their selfishness, still not understanding God's plan. But, mind you, we aren't just meant to be civil with our enemies, okay? We are to love them no matter what. We forgive and we love just like Jesus. Timmy kicked you in the shin. We are going to forgive and love that little boy. Bonnie stole your cookie. We are fixing to forgive and love that little girl. Someone said something ugly about you. Forgive and love. So, doing all of these hard things does not come without reward. Number 5 brings us, set your heart on heavenly treasure. Matthew 6:21 tells us, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So especially in adulthood, money is a whole situation. It's definitely a priority, and for those who have an abundance and all of the things that they can get with it, right? Jesus said it best, okay? He asked, what is your heart set on? So right now I want you to take a second and think about things that your heart is set on. Maybe you want financial stability so you can buy a house or a new car. Maybe the new house or the new car is what your heart is set on. Maybe you want to get married one day. Maybe you are married and maybe you want to start a family. Things like that. Whatever your heart is set on, those are your treasures. So anything here on earth can be broken, stolen, lost, or just plain old. The biggest is we can't take anything to heaven with us. Okay? Our treasures here, yeah, we can't take them with us. But you know something else about those treasures that we have here on earth? They can't compare or measure up to our treasures in heaven. Okay? Keep in mind, you can't serve God and serve money or earthly things at the same time. It just doesn't happen. You can't do it. Jesus let us know that we never need to worry about what we need to live because He will provide it, okay? As long as we seek Him and the kingdom, we're good to go. And having this faith kind of goes along with one of our other radicals, right? When we have pure motives that honor God, He stores that treasure for us in heaven. Treasure that we don't know much about, and yet it's better than we can possibly ever imagine, right? Paul said that just about all of his belongings were garbage compared to knowing Christ. Everything he had on this earth, complete trash. Wow, Paul. I don't know what Paul had, but to say that the things you had were trash, that they were garbage, just to knowing Christ, not, he was never, he met Jesus. Yes, that's true. But he wasn't a disciple. He didn't have a special relationship with him like a brother like John did or something. Just knowing Christ was better than all of his earthly possessions. So put God first or have treasured trash from upside down values. Okay? Lastly, for number 6 on the list is going to be, drumroll please, it's the humble who are exalted. Let's listen to that one again. It's the humble who are exalted. Luke 18:14 tells us, all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So to start off, here is a question to ponder. Okay? What does it take for a person to be right with God? I'll give you a second. If you need longer, you can pause right here. Yes, I know that was a big one, so let's talk about it. Another thing from Jesus' time was that many people believed that doing the right things and following the right rules were the most important things in God's eyes. And some people still believe that today. It doesn't sound wrong, right? Being obedient, following the rules, the laws of the land. But let's think about it. For example, a Pharisee was someone whose main goal was to be holier than everyone else by following every strict law. Mind you, these were some of the people who would pray extravagant prayers for everyone to hear and would make a big deal about them bringing in their offering to the temple. Okay? Now, our other example is a tax collector. And I know probably there were many. Some of the disciples were tax collectors, but then whenever I hear tax collector in Bible, I think of Zacchaeus. But keep him in mind because here we go. A tax collector was considered unrighteous. They were people who worked for the Roman government and were known to collect extra taxes to put in their pockets, which is why they had so much money. Jesus, doing what he does best, explains with this story. And this is why I'm telling you what a Pharisee and a tax collector are. Okay. A Pharisee and a tax collector walk into a bar. I'm just kidding. A Pharisee and a tax collector go to the temple and pray. The Pharisee prays, saying, "Thank you so much for making me better than this tax collector." I mean, golly, that side eye would be given from me for sure. Whereas the tax collector confesses his sins and asks for mercy. Which do you think left the temple justified before God? 3, 2, 1. It was the Pharisee. Yeah, no, I'm just totally kidding. It was the tax collector. People who are self-righteous are blinded from knowing their need of God's forgiveness. Exhibit A, the Pharisee. If you didn't know, we are basically all tax collectors. And by this, I mean sinners. I don't mean that we're going out collecting money from people and then pocketing the extra. But I mean, some of you who are listening could be an actual tax collector. That's ironic. But anyways, we're sinners. That's what I mean. We are not more spiritual when we look down our nose at others, okay? That kind of mindset keeps us far from humble and knowing we have nothing righteous to show God. Only when we receive God's forgiveness and salvation is when we realize our sinfulness. Let's take a nice, good look at ourselves in the mirror, ladies and gentlemen, and see if we're a tax collector or if we're a Pharisee. And always remember, man may look at the flesh, but God looks at the heart. And this concludes the first 6 radicals. Can't wait to meet up with you and discuss the second 6. I feel like these were really intense. Hopefully, the next 6 will have an intensity, but perhaps they might be a little less intense and not so calling out. Anyways, thank you for joining. I will surely be so excited to see y'all on the next one when we finish up the 12 radicals of Jesus.